So, with the release of a new Goofy movie documentary coming out on Disney Plus next week, and the 30th anniversary of a Goofy movie. Well, that's not what I expected to happen. Anyways, the 25th anniversary of an extremely Goofy movie, I thought it was finally time I reviewed these movies. So let's talk about these movies. By the way, crazy. One's 30 and one's 25 in the same year. Crazy. So, a Goofy movie is a little bit of a weird movie. If you don't know, this is not part of the Disney animated canon. And some people will be very confused when you tell them that, because this is obviously a Disney movie. It's Disney characters, like their most iconic characters, at least a couple of them. And yet it's not a Disney canon movie. And so the Disney canon is essentially what movies are made by Walt Disney Animation Studios. These movies were not made by Walt Disney Animation Studios. These were made by a sub-label of Walt Disney Animation Studios, kind of their own label. They were called Disney Toon. And what Disney Toon kind of did was they would make movies like this for lower budgets that were released in theaters, but they also, more famously, as years went on, they did the direct-to-video sequels for Disney animated movies. So all those sequels, you ever wonder why, like, we can't believe this is made by Disney. In a way, it wasn't. And then they also did the DuckTales movie and the Tinkerbell movies. This is probably their best work right here. This is a very odd movie that really works. And I think what I like about this movie is this is the first ever Disney movie, at least animation wise. Some of their movies back in the 90s and felt more like this, but that was in touch with current culture. Some of the lingo in this movie, it is a very 90s movie when you watch it. In some ways, that's a bad thing, where you watch this movie and you can see some of the lingo and references and style music was dated. Honestly, some of the music in this movie was dated before this movie came out, but it also just makes for a very unique viewing experience when you watch this movie, because Goofy and like Pete, they sit in a hot tub in this movie. How weird is that to see characters like doing normal stuff like that in a Disney movie where they just feel like people? And I think it adds to the charm of this movie and the emotions of this movie, which really, this is about a dad who's not relating to his son, understands he's growing up, but he's trying to be a part of his son's life. His son doesn't really get him and is a little embarrassed by him. But by the end, they grow a closer bond. It's a really well-scripted movie, and the animation is pretty good for a movie that didn't have the normal Disney animated movies of the time's budget. Because you gotta remember, this movie came out, I think, in 1995. And 1995 was a year right after The Lion King. A year right after The Lion King, this movie comes out. This movie does not look anywhere near as good as The Lion King, but it had like 1x the budget of that movie, I guess. I don't know exact budget, but it wasn't very high compared to what they had. And it looks amazing for what it is. You know, it's not a movie that you look at and you're like, man, that looks cheap. It looks good. And this is also the most character Max has ever been given in a movie. Or not even a movie, in any piece of media sense, except Goof Troop, maybe. This was actually supposed to be a theatrical film off of Goof Troop. But I don't know. I haven't looked into this, but I imagine when they were developing the DuckTales movie, and that movie came out and failed in theaters, and was supposed to launch a whole series of DuckTales movies, which I would have loved to see, but it failed. I imagine that they probably switched course to make a more sincere movie, and I think that worked in the betterment of that, because people don't talk about Goof Troop anymore. Those people will remember it, of course. It's it's Disney afternoon stuff. Those people who grew up with that are going to remember that. But people talk about a Goofy movie more. I see people all the time wearing backpacks and T-shirts. I'm always complimenting them because I'm like, hey, that's awesome. I love the movie. Um, the music in this movie, the songs, I think are a mixed bag because they're all really memorable, I would say. But like Songs on the Road don't feel like they match the tone of the rest of the movie. After Today is a fun song that actually I think really works. The Eye to Eye and Stand Out, while classics. Um, it was kind of Disney trying to be in tune with the music of the time, but by the time this movie came out, people weren't listening to that style of music. And the artist, I'm forgetting his name, he kind of disappeared after this movie in some ways. So, I don't know. And yeah, so I really love this movie. It's a classic. I've seen it multiple times, like dozens of times. I could probably quote this whole movie. In fact, so back in the day, I did not grow up in the 80s and 90s. I was born in 2003, so I'm pretty young, by the way. But I thought 80s and 90s culture was the coolest. So I would collect VHS tapes. Was into if I could find cassette tapes or records or whatever cool stuff I can find. That's what I like. I would watch 80s and 90s movies all the time. That was my jam. And the movie I watched the most in my VHS collection was a Goofy movie. Finally, the tape ate the player, and I couldn't watch this movie anymore. It is such a. So I finally had a upgrade to this Disney Movie Club exclusive Blu-ray. Very happy I do. Sadly, they're no longer around. But yeah, it's a movie I've seen multiple times. Anytime I have pizza, like for dinner, I always think about those Friday nights where I'm sitting at home in my room, popping it in the VHS player, and eating pizza. This is a great movie to eat pizza too, especially since they order pizza in the movie. There's a great scene in it where they're in the hotel room and they eat pizza. And that's just so much of my memories. I don't really have that much nostalgia for a extremely Goofy movie. I've seen it a couple times. Watched that one on Netflix. But this one is a classic to me. This is just such a wonderful movie that is so funny and charming. And it's just such a weird, bizarre movie for Disney to make. And they'll really never ever make anything like a Goofy movie ever again. There's something very unique and special about a Goofy movie, where it came from, how it happened. And it's kind of a lightning in a bottle movie, which is weird to say about a movie like this, because I think if some of you might watch this movie and you may not understand how fully special this movie is, but genuinely, there is nothing like a Goofy movie ever made by Disney, nor will there ever be. I think the closest we got to it is Zootopia in some ways. But that's a little bit different of a movie, and that's a special movie too. And I can't wait for part 2. So let me know your thoughts. Make sure and subscribe. I will have a review up for Extremely Goofy Movie next week.